Have you ever seen people sharing a word from another language describing something that we don't have a word for in English? These are some of my favorite things to find. And for example, this first slide, Fernweh, it's a German word that can be translated as far pain. We have words for its opposite, which is a homesick, but Fernweh is more of a wanderlust or like a travel bug. It's a deep ache for faraway lands. Unfortunately, it can't be cured unless you go far away. Or secondly, and I might butcher this word, kushisabishi. It's a Japanese word, and it's used to describe the feeling of your mouth being lonely. It's when your mouth needs food, not because it's hungry, but because it's lonely or bored. I often get kushisabishi around 9 p.m. There are words in other languages that we might not know that we have need of. These are just a couple. But in Ecclesiastes, which is our new series that we're beginning this summer, there's one very important word that is hard to translate because there is no English equivalent for this word. It appears in Ecclesiastes from start to finish, and the word is hevel. I want you all to say it, hevel. There you go. You're going to hear it a lot, and actually in the second verse of the first chapter, it's used 5 times, so we've already knocked out 5 of the 38 times it's used. So it's very important to the preacher for us to hear this word right at the beginning, because it's going to help us understand what he is getting at. I have another slide. So I asked ChatGPT to create a word cloud for me, and it did not deliver, but my husband did. And he turned some code into this word cloud. These are all the words in Ecclesiastes. But I want to focus your attention on the upper right. It says vanity, and it's fairly large because this is that hevel word, the word that is used 38 times. Like most things, context is helpful to determine meaning, right? We need to hear what is happening around this word in order to determine the meaning of the word. For example, if you asked me how my week was, and in a matter of 10 minutes, I said tuna 38 times, it might sound odd to you if you didn't know me too well. But if you know me, you have 2 options in your head as to what I'm talking about. You know that I'm either getting at the fact that seafood was a really big part of my week, or that I'm really into my cat, Tuna. And this is a picture of her helping me with my sermon a few months ago. So tuna or tuna? And the context is for you to decide. For instance, if I'm having a tuna sandwich, I'm not eating my cat, hopefully, but I'm having fish for lunch. And if my tuna was purring, I sure hope that's the cat. Otherwise, I'm never eating sushi again. Similarly, we have to ask, how is this word hevel being used? What does the preacher in Ecclesiastes want us to know? In Jeremiah, this word is used, hevel is used to describe an idol. So using meaningless or vain, as the KJV and the ESV translate it, that definition is absolutely appropriate. But the word can also mean vapor, or mist, or smoke, something ungraspable, something uncontrollable. So for me, the best English word, and the word that I'll probably use most, is either mist or smoke as I read this book. Because you can see smoke, right? But you can't grab it. And the wind can take a very strong, burning fire smoke and send it hundreds of miles away in another direction. You can't control smoke. And life is definitely ungraspable and uncontrollable. I'm going to share a story I wish I never had to share. It's one of the times that I felt like life was absolutely meaningless, like smoky, uncontrollable madness. It's about my friends, Mandy and James. Mandy was a missionary kid that I met at Moody while I was an undergrad, and her parents were living in Romania. She stayed in my studio apartment with me this summer of 2004, and we got to be very close, even though we were already good friends. And then after a bunch of people graduated from my friend group in college, we spent a lot of time together, and we all wound up at the same church in Chicago. Mandy and I became prayer partners. Her prayers mostly revolved around a boy named James. She was falling in love with him at church picnics, late night jumps into the Chicago River, which I don't recommend. She fell in love with him on a Wisconsin bike trip, and while flickering lights in apartment door eaves were burning the midnight oil, bearing witness to their late chats. Both had already been, in their early and mid-20s, badly burned in relationships. But with each late-night chat, they were being healed by one another, by the other's kindness, by the other's sassiness, and even by the other's stubbornness. Mandy was much quicker to make her feelings known, and James was a little bit more reluctant, worried that hurt from past relationships just had taken too deep a toll on his life to accept love again. Many of you have experienced this. But I was lucky because I got a front row seat to all the flirting, all the healing, all the overanalyzing, oh my gosh, the overanalyzing, and all the love. Finally, James was ready to commit, and within 2 months, the two of them learned how to ride without my third wheel. They were doing everything the right way. Lots of prayer. They were going slow, lots of communication, getting each other's families and friends involved, and support from anywhere they could find it. There was honesty everywhere in their relationship. They were only in their mid-20s, but things were looking positive. Healing was happening, love was blooming. They became Facebook official in February 2008, back when that was a thing. In late April, Mandy and I were going to hang out over the weekend, but James told me he had a surprise for her to go on Wednesday, and she wouldn't be able to make those plans, but he wouldn't tell me what. I knew Mandy's parents were retiring and moving back to Romania after serving there nearly 2 decades. Mandy hadn't seen her parents in just under a year. I thought, maybe James is going to surprise her and take her to see her family. But then I got a call on Wednesday, April 30th. It was from one of our deacons at church. And Val said, Jamie, I have something very sad to share with you, and I need you to sit down. She told me that while Mandy was biking home from work, she was an avid biker, a belligerent driver ran a red light and hit her, and she didn't make it. I started screaming in my bedroom, no, 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 no. I couldn't believe the words that Val had told me, and she had to say them again because I was in shock. I don't think I slept for a week. Earlier that day, James had been waiting on Mandy's doorstep for her to come home from work. His bags were packed to take Mandy to see her parents. Mandy's roommates had packed a bag for her so she could get on the L train with James and head to O'Hare. James had an engagement ring in his pocket, ready to propose. He knew Mandy would want to celebrate with her parents and 3 siblings that night in her American hometown. Life is heavy. I never, ever wanted to use Mandy's death in a sermon story. I was hesitant even to include it this morning because it's one of those stories that I keep close to my chest and tucked away. But the book of Ecclesiastes, as I read it, allows me to take this story to God's face and ask God, what the heck? Why? Why help James heal if he would only get so hurt again, and this time deeply and forever? Why give me a great friend the year after graduation, somebody to pray with, only to take her away? She was only 24. Why bring Mandy's parents back to the States just a few days too late? Why did Mandy have to take that road home while biking? Why didn't that driver slow down? Nothing made sense. Life is hevel. It's smoke. It's uncontrollable. Even if you have a 401k and good life insurance, life's hevel. Even if you have fertility doctors, life is hevel. If you have car insurance, you wore your helmet, you bought your home, you found someone that helps you heal, you have friends to love you, you have a kick-butt therapist, you have good wine and the right glass to drink it in, life is hevel. I don't know about you, but the fact that God inspired the preacher to write these words in this text gives me some breathing room for honesty. God will disrupt us in this book this summer. This is a very disrupting book. And God will not allow us to settle for easy answers. He wants us to be in Ecclesiastes. God will disrupt us. But please hear me. God disrupts us unto something. He won't turn over our faith for no reason. He turns it over so that it can be more pure, more honest, more self-aware, and more alive. When the preacher calls life hevel, he's not giving up. He's leaning in. Ecclesiastes is an interesting book, to say the least. Many of you have read it. And after calling life smoke, some of you are excited, probably. What is the preacher going to say next? Maybe for any number of reasons, you're excited to see this. Maybe life is not filled with much control or meaning these days. Maybe things are falling apart. And like John Travolta's meme, you wonder where God is. Or some of you might be scared to see what comes next. Because meaninglessness, smoke, that doesn't sound like faith. Faith sounds like life is beautiful. Life is a gift. Life is eternal. Those sound like faith. But life is uncontrollable? Life is a vapor? Not so much. And I am with you. Diving into the book of Ecclesiastes isn't necessarily in my comfort zone, but it's here in my Bible, and it's in yours too. And the preacher's honesty in saying that life is hevel will come to find out as we read the book is actually a statement filled with faith. There's wisdom literature, right? That we have Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. Each of them give us different gifts. Proverbs describes norms for living. If you do this, then this will happen. They're general statements that help us see, bad fish and company spoil after 3 days. That's a norm, because there are some people I want in my house only one day. And there are some people in my house that I would love there for months. And sometimes fish in the freezer can last a little longer, right? So they're norms. They're not promises, but they're norms. But God knows life isn't always Proverbs. Just because you obey doesn't mean that trouble won't come your way. You're probably remembering a time even now when you did the right thing, and after a lot of prayer, the bad thing happened anyway. That is why we have Job and Ecclesiastes, because these are the exceptions to the norms. So we go into Ecclesiastes actually to bolster our faith in a sturdy God, not to give it up. Not to let go of faith, but to ask God to join us in our what and our why. And do you see this? Are your eyes open, Lord? Do you see what's happening around me? Our faith might look different at the end of going through this process. But if we trust that Ecclesiastes is inspired just like Genesis or Isaiah or Mark or Romans, then this book is here for our good, and it's here for God's glory. So I want to ask you a question. Where does life feel like smoky, uncontrollable madness right now? Can you honestly bear that before the Lord and ask him to join you? Can you stretch out your very heart before the Lord and allow Ecclesiastes to shape your questions and your concerns? I'm not going to lie, in these questions, your heart might become paper thin. I want to ask the Lord why I've been a Proverbs woman and I haven't been rewarded like a Proverbs woman. Ecclesiastes not only allows me to ask that, but it shoves it in my face. I want to ask why my prayers have been met with deafening silence. I want to ask why every time I turn the news on, despite my efforts to be a good citizen here on earth, that there's egregious war and murder. I want to ask why. So I bear these questions before the God who inspired the book of Ecclesiastes. Answers I may not get. Ecclesiastes actually doesn't promise that. But an honest, deep faith is going to be mine, and it's going to be yours too. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.